Remember when I said part 2 coming in January? Well, so much for that. So in part 1, I said I was talking about Snoke and the big scar on his head that like he didn't get from actual life experience, and instead he was just like born with or cloned with. And like I was talking about how like conceivably it could have been put on there as like a red herring, and I didn't elaborate on that, and I meant to, but I forgot to because I hate Asian people. But like, you know, like there are movies, there are stories where like, you know, a character will give themselves like certain like superficial traits as like a red herring, and then you find out what they actually are, and it doesn't match up with like what they have on them. But then they show you, they show you like the process of them going through that to like throw people off. I don't know, like the one example I can think of is the live action Speed Racer movie for some reason. And spoilers for the live action Speed Racer movie in case you were worried about that. But like there's Racer X. He's the mysterious one. You don't see his face. And it's the whole time Speed Racer thinks it's his dead brother. And then at the end he tells him to take off his helmet because he's like, I know you're my dead brother. And he takes it off and he's just like some guy who looks nothing like his dead brother. And he's like, oh man, you're not my dead brother. And then it shows like the flashback of him escaping the wreckage of the car crash that didn't actually kill him. And like getting plastic surgery on his face to change his face. And it's like, whoa, he was his dead brother, but he just changed his face to trick us into thinking he wasn't. Trick Speed Racer. So it's like maybe they could have done that with Snoke, but they didn't. They just said, I made Snoke, and expected us to all accept it.
So they decide to go onto the Star Destroyer to rescue Chewbacca. And Zori gives Poe the First Order credit or whatever. Lets them get onto the ship. Poe says something to the tune of, can I kiss you? And she kind of shrugs him off. So Rey and the gang, they get into the ship. 2 stormtroopers come in to check out the ship that just landed there, and they immediately go out like guns blazing, shoot the stormtroopers dead, and just go through the hangar undetected by anyone else. Get into these hallways, shoot the stormtroopers in there, shoot the cameras like in Lego Star Wars 2, the video game. Actually, do they shoot the cameras in the original trilogy? I guess they do, right?
Yeah, no, they after when they're in the detention center. So the first thing I was thinking of when I saw them shooting the cameras was in Lego Star Wars 2, where you had to shoot the security cameras in the Death Star levels.
But no, they have to shoot them in the actual movie. In like the reason why it's in the Lego game is because in the actual movie, when Luke and Han get into the one detention center area, they get into the shootout with the stormtroopers, and they shoot out all the cameras during the confusion. But like that's the point I'm trying to get to, is like, Rise of Skywalker has a ship come into a hangar in not the Empire's, but the First Order's control. 2 stormtroopers come to investigate. That was the exact same setup that A New Hope had, but in A New Hope, they have the 2 characters that would make most sense for them to dress up like stormtroopers. That way they can get through unnoticed. In this movie, they just go in guns blazing and they don't even really care. It's like they know the script won't let them get hurt. They could have had Finn and Poe disguise themselves as stormtroopers and then have Rey be the one who doesn't need to disguise herself because she's Rey. And then you could have had Finn and Poe rescue Chewie disguised as stormtroopers, and it would have been like, you could argue that that's too close to the original scene, but like logistically it would make sense for them to do that. And also this movie seems so dedicated to referencing the original trilogy anyway. And you get like kind of a mishmash of 2 scenes. You get the scene of Luke disguised as a stormtrooper rescuing Leia, except this time it's Chewie, and you get the scene of 2 stormtroopers who are actually rebels in disguise walking with Chewie, pretending that they're transferring him when in actuality they're on his side. But no, they just rush him with guns and they get him. So then Rey goes into Kylo's room to get the dagger because Chewie had the dagger on him when he got kidnapped. She finds like a few of Chewie's like other stuff in there, like his ammo belt. I don't know why that specifically is kept in Kylo's room. Meanwhile, Kylo is on the planet that the gang was just on, the Spice Runner planet. And he does the Force Skype call with her to try and find out where she is. And that's kind of like an interesting visual, like she's in his place and he's where she was. But now, like, they get into a lightsaber fight via Force Skype. So they're clashing lightsabers with each other from across a distance. At one point, Kylo's lightsaber, like, imagine what it looks like from someone on the outside looking in at Kylo. He's just like swinging his lightsaber at nothing. But like Kylo swipes his lightsaber at like a bag of like cranberry looking stuff. It's just like a bag of fruit, and they spill all over the floor. And they spill all over the floor where Rey is, even though she's not in the location where they spilled. And then like in the next shot, it looks like there's no more space cranberries on the floor where Rey is. which sort of suggests that, like, them spilling is just a visual thing. The space cranberries haven't actually gone where Rey is. She's just seeing them spill over because she's seeing parts of where Kylo is. And then there's the shot from the trailer where they both hit the big black statue, and the big black statue is what Darth Vader's old helmet is on, because that's in this movie again. And the Darth Vader helmet falls, and Kylo sees it fall on the ground where he is, and that's what tips him off to her being in his room. And so he goes back to the Star Destroyer to get to them. And, like, that's interesting. I would have been fine with that, because it seems to suggest that, like, stuff spilling over into the other person's side of the call is just like a visual thing. Like, Rey sees the space cranberries from where Kylo is, but they're not actually in her room. It's still where Kylo is. And Kylo sees the Vader helmet because Rey interacted with it just like he interacted with the space cranberries. But the Vader helmet doesn't actually appear where he is. He just sees it appear. And I'd be fine with that, if not for the fact that earlier on in the movie, it's shown that it's not just a visual thing, it's a straight up, like, Kylo could grab a physically existing object, pull it to where he is, and have it be where he is instead of where the person he grabbed it from is. So it's not just like a visual spillover, it's like an actual teleportation of the item.
Instead of having Kylo grab the necklace and, like, have it analyzed, they could have had him see, like, some sort of visual cue as to, like, where they were. Like, maybe he sees, like, they put, like, some, like, celebratory markings on her face, and, like, he notices what they look like, and they find out that, like, only a certain culture on a certain planet does that. Or you could see some native species, like, someone bumps into Rey, and so that puts him in the force projection. Kylo can see who bumps into Rey, and he can find out what species they are, and they only live on that planet. Or, like, anything else.
So then Finn, Poe, and Chewie get captured because they're not wearing stormtrooper outfits. Hux shows up. They're getting lined up to get shot down, like, firing line style. Hux says that he wants to be the one to shoot them because they've caused him so much trouble. They, like, you know, it zooms in on either Finn or Poe's face. They're kind of interchangeable in this movie. They're, like, both just the side characters. It zooms in on one of their faces. They kind of, like, close their eyes, braced for the end. You hear the blasters go off. It zooms out. Lo and behold, Hux has shot the stormtroopers, and he says that he was the mole. I thought that was interesting. He says the reason why he was the mole is because he doesn't care who wins. He just wants Kylo to lose. Okay, sure, fine enough. Like, some people said that, like, they thought it was, like, really apparent that he was the mole. I had forgotten about the mole even being a person who was, like, worth caring about after the beginning of the movie where they mentioned there's a mole. I didn't even really think it was important to know who the mole was. So I thought it was an interesting reveal. It gives Hux something to do. But yeah, like, earlier on in the movie, when Kylo is talking to all of the, I keep wanting to say Imperial, but First Order higher-ups in a room together, he has his helmet back because, like, a monkey man welded it back together. You see, and it looks like Kylo's, like, standing outside when the monkey man is welding his helmet in the beginning of the movie. Like, as if he's waiting for the monkey man to do what he ordered him to do. It would have been interesting, or it would have, like, fit a little better if the Emperor had been the one to, like, have it ordered to be made for him and just gave it to him. Because then it would explain why Kylo, it would seem a little less like going back on what they did in the last movie. Because I kind of liked him destroying the helmet in the last movie. I thought it was like one of the few interesting things. One, it was you know, we already know who Kylo Ren, what he looks like under the mask, so there was no reason for the audience to be kept in the dark about his appearance anymore. And two, it was like kind of a character growth moment. Like he's sick of trying to ape Vader. Speaking of ape, Monkey Man, Welder Man, make helmet. And so him, like, re-welding it in this one is just sort of like, oh, he had it because he wanted to have it. And then the next movie, he broke it, didn't want it anymore. And then in this movie, he fixes it because he wanted to get it. Seems like two back and forth. Whereas if the Emperor had been the one to make it, then it would have been like, oh, okay, the Emperor's, like, goading him into filling this role again. So yeah, in the earlier scene where he's talking to the generals, and he's got his newly welded up helmet again, he, like, explicitly says to the whole lot of them, he's like, I sense some hang-ups about my appearance. And he looks at Hux, and Hux just goes, no, sir, everything's fine. And it's like, you're really on the nose about that. Like, Kylo explicitly, like, referenced the fact that the thing he thinks people are judging him for is his hat. Guys, are you making fun of how I look? Why would you do that? I look cool. Like, he could have just said something a little more general, a little more suggestive, like, does anyone have any problems with this? And just, you know, had it be implied that he, like, doesn't want anyone to make fun of his helmet. I don't know. So Hux helps them escape and get back to the Millennium Falcon. He right before they go, he tells Finn to shoot him in the arm. That way it looks like they overpowered him instead of him letting them go. And Finn shoots him in the leg, which I thought was good. It's like Finn's willing to play along, but like he's gonna do a little more damage than just shooting him in the arm. This guy's caused them a bunch of trouble, and he's not even really a good guy still. He explicitly says he doesn't care if they win. So he's sort of, he's going along with the plan, but getting a little bit more catharsis out of it. And then in like the next scene, not the next scene, but the next scene you see Hux in, he's got like a bandage around his leg, and this new general that they brought in because no one can take Hux seriously anymore because TLJ bastardized him, shoots him dead when he claims that he was overpowered and says, "It looks like we found the mole." And now this new guy we have no concept of. He says that he used to work for the Empire, and now that the Emperor's back, he serves the Emperor. Now that guy's replaced Hux in the 11th hour of this movie. His name is General Pride. Maybe they should have made him gay. Give him a husband. I didn't see the gay kiss in this movie. I figured it happened at the end when they were celebrating, so I looked out for it, and I couldn't see it. A handful of people made a big deal about, like, yay, first gay kiss in Star Wars. And then, like, it was pretty clear that the reason it was so small was, like, so they could cut it out in international releases. I think they kept it in China, which was kind of significant, but, like, it got cut out in the airing in the Middle East. I don't know. I think it's fine that, like, it's just a thing with, like, two sort of side soldier characters. It's like, yeah, the Rebel Alliance is, like, made up of, like, not the Rebel Alliance, the Resistance is made up of just, like, a hobbled together bunch of people. So, like, some of those people would be gay. It's just, they're just two ordinary people who've got, like, a life outside of the Resistance, and you get, like, a little glimpse of that. Sure, why not? It doesn't necessarily have to be front and center, because, like, the main characters have kind of got other stuff to deal with outside of romance. Han and Leia had, like, something develop over multiple movies, whereas, like, Rey and Kylo kiss at the end, and then he dies, and it didn't even necessarily seem like it was a build-up thing. It was just like an in-the-moment thing. Poe is suggested to have had a girlfriend, and they don't get together in this movie. There's not much romance to be spoken of in general. They've just got so much other stuff they have to shoehorn into this movie. So much other stuff that was never built up in other movies. Like, you weren't necessarily going to see, like, a very fleshed-out romance arc, gay or straight, in this movie. And two people kiss in the background, like, I guess that's fine. It was like, I could barely even see it. It was not worth writing, like, articles about to be like, look, finally, the first gay kiss in Star Wars.
Or it wasn't just articles saying it. It was like J.J. Abrams confirmed that there is an LGBT moment in this movie. If they were just going to cut the gay kiss out of, like, foreign releases of the movie, why not have it be, like, front and center? Like, just have, like, a whole separate shot dedicated to that kiss. Because you're going to cut that shot out anyway. It's not like you need to hide it, because the shot in and of itself won't be in the movie at all.
I don't really know, like, how much it can be held against, like, the studio, that they're sort of strong-armed into this weird position where, like, they might want to put in, like, a gay character or two, but they have to make it easily editable out, otherwise it won't show in other countries. I don't know. That's, like, a whole topic on itself. Oh, so yeah, during the Skype call, I forgot to say, Kylo reveals to Rey that she's Palpatine's granddaughter. Oh, whoopsie daisy. He says to her, like, once again, that seems like so, it's like pulling the rug out from under you. Like, oh, we said her parents were nobody, but we never said anything about her grandparents, so we really got you there, didn't we? Kylo says to her, like, I never lied to you. Your parents were nobody, but your grandparents were Palpatine. And, like, he specifically says he never lied to her, which suggests that he knew? But if that's the case, then he still did lie to her, because he told her that her parents sold her for drinking money, which is not the case at all. They left her there to try and keep her away from Palpatine. But if he didn't know that Palpatine was her grandfather, then why even come in with, like, with the caveat of, oh, I never lied to you. Even if Palpatine was her dad, even if her parents weren't nobodies, he still wouldn't have been lying to her when he told her that initially, because he didn't know. He was led to believe it was the truth. I never lied to you suggests that, like, he got off on a technicality by only telling her part of the story when he knew the whole story. But that's not the case, because if he did know the whole story, then he still lied to her. So yeah. Wait, does he tell her that during the Force Skype call, or does he tell her that, like, in the hangar? I don't even remember. I think it's during the Force Skype call. I don't remember. It doesn't matter. No, it's during the Force Skype call. So then As they escape in the Falcon, everyone except Rey. Rey gets out there. Kylo shows up to confront her. I forget the specifics of their encounter. I think he reaches out his hand again, like, join me. So the Falcon turns the blue part of itself towards the hangar, and the thrust from it pushes everyone back, pushes Kylo back. That's the shot from the trailer of him getting blown back by, like, wind. Rey is, like, just underneath where it's blowing so she doesn't get hit by it, and she jumps onto the ramp. They get out. Now they gotta head to Endor. Meanwhile, the First Order decides that they gotta show the good guys what's what, and so they decide to blow up the planet that Zori Bliss was on, and they do exactly that. They blew it up because they didn't like the fact that good guys exist. R.I.P. Zori Bliss and Babu Frick, never to be seen again. Such is the nature of war with the First Order, I guess. So then the boys get to Endor, and there's a big piece of the Death Star stuck in the ocean. It's way too big for it to conceivably have been a piece of shrapnel from an explosion, but they needed it to be recognizable as the Death Star. And they're like, how are we gonna... Oh, they meet horse people. They meet a woman named Jana. She's fine. I have neither positive nor negative opinions of her. She's in the movie and she's fine. But her and her buddies used to be stormtroopers, and they are on horses. So they bring them to the Death Star, and they're like, how are we gonna know where to go on the Death Star? And then, luckily, Rey has the knife that she didn't know she needed anymore, but she thankfully took from Kylo's room. And Rey holds up the knife, and the knife lines up with the shape of the wreckage of the Death Star. So it's not an ancient knife, because the Death Star only was there in the past 40 years. So Palpatine made a knife shaped like the broken Death Star. He didn't do anything with the Death Star ruins, except put a little holocron in it, a little wayfinder in it. And he gave his assassin a knife shaped the way that it shaped, instead of just telling the assassin, hey, when you need to find me, go to the Death Star. Well, no, he would have known the Death Star regardless. But no, because the way you find out the Death Star is the inscriptions on it in Sith say to go to these coordinates, which is Endor. When he could have just not had that written, told him, go to the Death Star, it's in my throne room, because that's where it ends up being. Rey pulls out a little piece of the knife. Don't ask how she knows that she needed to pull out a piece of the knife that wasn't visible before. And it points to where she needs to go, and she leaves the B team behind, and she goes into the throne room. That's where it is. It's the broken throne room where Luke and Vader fought. So it's not even this obscure location. It is a very... Palpatine could have just said, hey, you know the throne room? Go there. Goes inside, goes into the super secret room, sees a vision of herself. She's evil. She has the double-bladed scissor saber from the trailer. And then she makes a scary face with scary shark teeth, evil eyes. Rey gets scared, and she yeets out. Lo and behold, Kylo's there. They have a fight scene. Kylo does like a weird jump during the fight, and then it cuts back to the B team. I don't remember what it cuts back to them doing, but then it cuts back to Rey and Kylo, who are now fighting on the outside of the wreckage, like in the water, with like these like beams going through the water. It doesn't show us them like going from one room to the other. We just had to like be okay with that having happened. So the B team decides that the best course of action is to run towards the lightsaber fight that they can't participate in because they don't have lightsabers, instead of standing back and maybe like shooting at Kylo Ren from a distance with the blasters that they have, because those are the weapons that they use. So Rey, not wanting them to get killed with a lightsaber because it's a lightsaber fight and they don't have lightsabers, I think she pushes back Finn with the Force and then like jumps elsewhere so that the lightsaber battle will happen between her and Kylo in a place where no one else can reach them. Also, if I recall correctly, we don't really see how Rey and Kylo get from inside the Death Star to outside the Death Star. Like, we never see them move locations. They're just in the Death Star throne room in one scene. And then we cut to something else, and then we cut back to them, and now they're, like, on these metal structures in like, the wavy ocean. So then Leia decides it's her time to shine. So Leia uses the Force Skype call to talk to Kylo Ren. She says, Ben, and then, because the effort would kill you, she dies. And she just gets lucky, and it just so happens that this was the best time possible to say Ben in a Force Skype call to Ben. And Kylo is like, oh my god, my mom was talking to me, oh man. And in his moment, he's like beating Rey. He's about to win the fight. And with just perfect timing, Leia just goes, Ben! She doesn't say it like that. So Kylo hesitates, and then Rey stabs him in the chest. And then Leia dies, because the effort would kill you. And that's Leia's involvement in this film. I can't really say like what else they could have done with Leia because I don't know like the exact clips and dialogue lines that they had access to. It's definitely a case of like it's not really anyone's fault that they're in this situation. Carrie Fisher just died, as people tend to do. I wouldn't call them like using recycled footage in this movie like disrespectful or anything. And I wouldn't say that them like putting her in this movie at all is like exploitative because like they were fully prepared to make 3 movies with Carrie Fisher in them when she was alive and when everyone assumed that she was going to be alive for them. And then just their luck, they decide to have, I think they said they wanted a 7 to be a Han movie, 8 to be a Luke movie, and 9 to be a Leia movie. So naturally the person they save for last is the person who dies first. Once again, just bad luck, no one's fault. If they were to like keep making Star Wars movies after this and they kept like recycling Leia footage, I'd be like, alright buddies, cut it out. But this was just a situation where like they really kind of had no choice. Maybe they should have had her die off screen and like have it start off with her funeral. But I can also understand them wanting Leia to like be in this movie, because this was supposed to be a Leia-centric movie, whereas the last one was Luke, the last one before that was Han. You know, if they were making plans to make a new Star Wars trilogy, and then in talks for Episode 7, Carrie Fisher died, I'd be like, alright guys, maybe just scrap this. Or maybe make it without the original cast. But like, they were in a situation where they were already going full steam ahead, and then right before the last part of this whole thing, the actress that they needed to use for this movie died. It's really like, I can't really like get mad at anyone for it. Having said that, this was not a very good plan on Leia's part. She forced Skype called him, only had enough strength in her to say Ben before she died, and it just so happened to be the perfect time during a lightsaber fight where Kylo could be distracted by the word Ben being said by his mom. Where if that had not been said to him, he would have killed Rey, but because it was said to him, Rey killed him. But Rey did not kill him actually, because he did not die, because she used Force Heal to heal him. And then Kylo goes for a little bit, and then Rey just kind of leaves. And by kind of leaves, I mean actually definitely leaves. She takes his TIE fighter, has the Wayfinder in it, and yeets on her own without the B team. Also, Janna was a stormtrooper. She sort of has the same origin as Finn. And she mentions that like her whole platoon, I think is the word, company, I think she says, her whole company of stormtroopers like laid down their arms because they were told to execute civilians. And I guess that's them trying to kind of like fill in the gaps of like, hey, you know, if Finn left, surely other people would have left. Bring it to its natural conclusion, I guess. But like there are a few questions that come up. Like, is this a common thing? Like, a whole company decided that they didn't want to do this all in one go. And I imagine part of that is a little bit mob mentality. If, like, a bunch of stormtroopers are already laying down their arms, more people in the same company will lay down their arms as well. Because they know they've got, like, the team on their side. But still, like, once again, like, apparently it's implied that Finn is supposed to have the Force in this. So it's been said. So you could argue that maybe the reason why he was special enough to leave is because he had the Force. In which case, nobody else should have left. But if it is just, like, a thing that anyone can do, then, like, does that mean that there are a bunch of other stormtroopers who have laid down their arms and quit the First Order? How many times has it happened? Where are the others? What makes Finn so special? I guess the Force, but not in this trilogy. John Boyega's not getting Disney Plus, as he said. So we're never gonna see Finn use the Force. But yeah, Janna's fine in this. So Rey goes back to Octo, the planet that Luke was on, the island from Last Jedi. There's this weird close-up shot of her, like, chucking wood. She's throwing wood onto a fire, and when you see the wide shot of it, it looks fine. But in, like, the close-up, her, like, arm is moving weird. Like, the throwing motion looks, like, weirdly weak, which might not actually be because they're weak throws. It's just, like, weirdly cropped so that you kind of don't see the full motion of it.
Also, where did Rey get the firewood from?
It zooms out, she's throwing wood onto a fire, the TIE fighter's in the fire. She's decided to exile herself because she doesn't want to become a Sith. She throws the lightsaber into the fire, and and Ghost Luke grabs the lightsaber in midair and says, like, a Jedi's weapon deserves more respect. And, you know, Luke just sort of steps back on everything he said in The Last Jedi. He kind of, like, he already did that a bit at the end of The Last Jedi. He was like, well, I was wrong about everything. But he just straight up says in this movie that he was wrong. Luke's hair does not look good in this. It looked fine in The Last Jedi, and it's supposed to be the same hair that he had in The Last Jedi in this movie, but, like, it just looks bad. Initially, I chalked it up to, like, the wind was blowing it weird, but it looks bad in, like, every shot. And also, it's the same island he was on before. First of all, why is wind blowing his hair? He's a ghost. I guess maybe the image of him is reacting as though it's in the real world. I mean, there's already a bunch of interaction, like physical interaction between ghosts in the real world now, even though they're ghosts. Yeah, his hair looks bad in every shot. He tells her he was wrong, brings her to, first of all, she was the one who convinced him that he was wrong, so I don't know why. So now he needs to tell her that he was wrong, even though she already knew that because she was the one who taught him that. He brings her to his little hut, shows her where there's a brick, where she opens up the brick and there's a lightsaber there. And it is at that point that I think to myself, Luke's green lightsaber looks a little different. And as it turns out, it is not Luke's green lightsaber, it is Leia's blue lightsaber. And that's why it looks a little different than Luke's green lightsaber, because it's a different lightsaber that just looks kind of similar. I like Luke's better. So then we get a flashback to CGI de-aged Luke and CGI de-aged Leia training. And Luke says that Leia decided to stop her Jedi training because she could sense it ended with Kylo Ren, which I guess is this movie's half-assed way of explaining why Leia wasn't a Jedi in 7. Remember when Return of the Jedi had a happy ending? Remember when we thought Leia was going to be a Jedi just like Luke, and we thought that Leia and Han were going to live happily ever after, and we thought the galaxy was safe? Remember being happy? Remember when the Emperor was dead? Remember when there was no more evil empire and there was a new republic? Remember good things? I try to. So then Luke yeets his X-Wing out of the water that it has been in for like 10 years, and it works all fine and good. Apparently Rey was a little more dedicated to the exile thing since she burned the ship she came in and Luke didn't. And Luke just left it in the water that he very easily could have taken it out of. Luke couldn't have gone physically to fight Kylo Ren. He had no ship. His X-Wing is submerged. Never mind. He could have. Also in this movie, Force Skype call people can actually clash lightsabers and physically interact with what they Skype call with. So Luke went through all that effort of not having Kylo actually touch him for nothing. He could have clashed lightsabers with him. He could have killed Kylo. What would have happened if Kylo or Rey had stuck their lightsaber through each other in their Force Skype call? Would the lightsaber still have gone through, or would they have actually would one of them killed the other? I don't know. I don't know if these movies know. Remember when Lando wasn't stranded on a desert planet? Remember Yub Nub? So then Kylo's still sitting on the Death Star ruins with the waves near him, just going... And then all of a sudden he hears a voice go, "Hey, kid." And you're like, oh man, Luke's talking to him. And no, it's actually Han Solo. They paid Harrison Ford a fat paycheck to care about Star Wars for 5 minutes again. And Han, they have a scene that kind of mirrors their scene from 7, but now it's Kylo being nice instead of being mean, and throwing away his lightsaber instead of stabbing him. And it's a good scene, they're doing a good job. Harrison Ford didn't shave for this, but it doesn't matter. It's emotional. It achieves what it wants to achieve in that regard. It's a good scene between the two of them, but I hate having to undercut every good thing I say about this movie with a criticism, but I'm pretty sure Han isn't a Force ghost because he doesn't have the Force. So maybe just anyone can become a Force ghost? Maybe Han was given Force training that we were never told about. I like how the 2 members of the original trilogy who were not Jedi were both taught the Force and both abandoned it. So it was just Luke again who was a Jedi, even though Leia was supposed to be a Jedi. Or Han is not a Force ghost, and it's just Kylo thinking real hard, in which case Kylo is just imagining his dad telling him he can let go. So Kylo throws his lightsaber into the ocean.
Kylo could have kept his lightsaber. I get that it's symbolic, but it's that's a useful tool. He ends up needing a lightsaber later on in the movie. And initially I was alright, well, so they wanted him to not have a red lightsaber because he's a good man now. And he gets the extra blue lightsaber from Rey, but he doesn't know that he's going to get it from her. And it occurred to me that what they could have done is, because Rey ends up exiling herself right after this, so what they could have done is they could have had her, since she doesn't intend to do any more Jedi stuff and just is gonna hermit herself, they could have had her drop the lightsaber or leave it there in the Death Star wreckage in the big oceany bit and have Kylo pick that one up, because she's gonna get a lightsaber anyway later on from Luke. So you wouldn't need to have a Force teleport power, and you wouldn't need to have Kylo walk into a fight with no weapon. Except he did have a weapon, he had a blaster, and then in the next shot, the blaster disappears from his hand. This movie's great. That's later on. That's when he's fighting the Knights of Ren.
Oh, yeah. So earlier, I think in the throne room, Kylo mentions that he and Rey are a Force dyad, which is not the best name, but I'll allow it. The idea is interesting, because she's the granddaughter of the Emperor and he's the grandson of Vader. I like the parallel. I don't really know why that makes... First off, what happened to Rey's parents? Why did Palpatine make a child and then not use that child as a weapon, but then try to use that child's child as a weapon? How did that child escape Palpatine's sight? I guess when he was dead? When did he have this child? It's 42 years... No, 42 years is what it is in real life. It was like 30 years between 6 and 7. Rey is like in her 20s. So Rey was conceived about a decade after the Death Star blew up. Maybe a little less. Maybe... Yeah, no, less than that. Meaning Palpatine, while he was alive, raised someone to adulthood. Or very close to adulthood. Old enough to be able to have a child. Either while he was alive or only a few years after he died. What was he doing with that child? Buy the comics to find out. Why did he bother with Vader if he had a kid? It was 19 years between Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope. Palpatine very well could have had a kid when he was Chancellor. So the Force dyad, once again, it's an interesting parallel. One's the grandchild of the Emperor, one's the grandchild of Darth Vader. I don't see why that inherently connects them. Does the dark side skip a generation? Because Luke was a Jedi, but he was tempted by the dark side and he overcame that. And then Rey, who's a grandchild and not a child like Luke, is also tempted by the dark side and overcomes it. And Kylo, who's a grandchild, turns to the dark side and overcomes it, just like Vader. And Palpatine doesn't overcome anything, he's just evil. If they had said in the movie, the dark side skips a generation, that would have sounded very stupid. But I'm interested if there's a way to phrase that so that it doesn't sound stupid.
The dark side fluctuates. It dies down, but then it rises back up again. I don't know.
The dark side skips a generation, I guess. They just say the word dyad, and we're supposed to find it important. Lando has made his way back to the Resistance planet. He didn't go with the rest of the gang, so he just has had a way to get back this whole time and didn't, I guess. I don't know. Billy D. Williams seems like he's having a good time. They talk about how, like, if they do the thing, if they fight the First Order, then a bunch of other, like, regular people will come and fight with them, because regular people are on their side. Don't ask why they weren't doing this before.
And there's a bit when they're all talking about how they're going to go out and beat the First Order, and Poe says something along the lines of, the First Order, that's how they want to win. They want to convince us that we're alone, but we're not alone. And, like, it seems like it's sort of like trying to go against what happened at the end of the last movie where there's like 12 of them on a spaceship together because they failed so miserably, so consistently, one after the other, that there's barely any of them left. And Poe's like, no, actually, there is more than that amount because normal people will help us. But Poe says the First Order wants you to think that you're alone. And Rian Johnson made a movie that ended with them thinking that they were alone. Does this mean that Poe said that Rian Johnson is the bad guys? I think so. But that's just a theory. A Star Wars theory. Thanks for consuming. But no, like, this movie, a lot of people have pointed out that, like, it seems to be taking these sort of jabs at The Last Jedi, and part of me sees that, because, like, it fixes the helmet, and it fixes the lightsaber, and it has Luke say, a Jedi's weapon deserves more respect. And it says the Holdo maneuver is a 1 in a million, which raises a lot of questions, which that's, oh god, that's a whole thing in and of itself. Holdo took a 1 in a million shot to do a thing with the hopes that it would kill the ship that she was crashing into, and lo and behold, it did it, against all odds. And also, in The Last Jedi, when she, like, points the ship towards the big Star Destroyer, the people on the bridge are, like, seem to be very aware of what she's doing and are horrified, which they shouldn't be if it's a 1 in a million chance. But yeah, it's in addition to this movie doing a bunch of things that seem like they're sort of like taking shots at The Last Jedi, it also does things that seem to like bolster The Last Jedi. Like they take the raindrops on Kylo's hand from the Force Skype call, and they extend that to mean that you can just transport, like, whole physical objects with no limits. It takes Yoda being able to use lightning as a ghost and extends that to just ghosts being able to pick things up. So I don't know what JJ's opinion towards The Last Jedi is. It seems like he's kind of sending conflicting messages about it.
Rey goes to the Sith planet. Palpatine tells her to kill him in anger, and that'll transfer him into her. I don't know how literal that is. I don't know if that means that, like, Palpatine's actual consciousness himself will go into Rey's body. I don't know how he did this. I don't know why specifically that requires her to kill him. I don't know if it's in a more general sense, like the darkness will pass into her. He says Empress Palpatine, which is a cool name. It's a nifty combination of words. It's like, oh, first there was Emperor Palpatine, now there's Empress Palpatine. Theoretically, if Rey had been a boy, then she would have been Emperor Palpatine II, Roman numeral 2. And that would have sounded cool too. It's like, oh, Emperor Palpatine. You remember that. Now get ready for Emperor Palpatine II. Both of those names sound cool, so they both work. But Rey's a girl, so they said Empress Palpatine, and that's a cool name too. This movie keeps flip-flopping on whether Rey killing Palpatine is a good or bad thing. Is it specifically killing Palpatine that's bad? Like, you can kill other people as a Jedi. You can give into the darkness and kill other people in anger. But killing the worst person, literally an evil emperor Sith Lord, is bad and is giving too much into your darkness. So it's not really about don't give into the darkness. It's don't give into the darkness specifically in regards to this guy who actually definitely deserves death because he has cheat codes that lets him not die because he'll pass into you. It's not really like an actual like moral issue. It's just that literally he has like a backdoor to escape death if you kill him that way. So Kylo shows up, he jumps onto a chain, and it's a big chain, it's a very large chain, like each link is a person size. And he hits his face on the chain link, and he goes, ow. It got a chuckle out of me. The Knights of Ren are there. They've got, like, swords and axes and stuff, and Kylo does not have a lightsaber. I saw some screenshots of, like, the visual dictionary pages about the Knights of Ren, and about how edgy they are, but apparently they do have, like, lightsaber-proof metal in some of their weapons. So Rey force Skype call teleports Leia's lightsaber, or Luke's lightsaber? I forget which one she gives to him. She force Skype call teleports one of the lightsabers she has to Kylo. He fights the Knights of Ren. They die very easily. That's their only involvement in this movie. R.I.P. the Knights of Ren. Long live the Knights of Jen. Kylo runs in to where Rey and Palpatine are. Palpatine just yeets them into formation with the Force. They are no match for him. And he goes, Force Dyad. And he, like, sucks the power out of them, makes himself into, like, true, pure Palpatine, but not like the one who isn't disfigured from Force Lightning in Episode 3. The one who looks the way he does in Return of the Jedi, that one. He just has fingers now, and his lips aren't blue, and he doesn't look like waterlogged like a dead body left in a river. He just looks the regular amount of deformed that he normally looks. So then he uses the Force and throws Ben in a hole.
And the explanation he gives for why he does this is, as I once fell, you will now fall too. Or he says something along those lines. He threw Kylo down a hole because he was once thrown down a hole himself.
And he throws Rey not in a hole, he just on the ground and keeps her there. And he shoots lightning up into the sky, and it hits all the spaceships, because spaceships came to fight his spaceships. Man, the Wikipedia page for this movie does not even really get into the specifics of how the space battle works. So Palpatine's got the 10,000 Star Destroyers ready to go. The Resistance, they followed Rey, because she sent out a signal from her ship that had the Wayfinder in it that she used to get to the Sith planet, so they followed her to the Sith planet. A bunch of civilians come in with their own spaceships because they wanted to help and only decided to do so now. They've got like a tower, I think, that it's like a navigation thing that lets the Star Destroyers know where to go. And so if they blow that up, I don't really know how it works. It looked cool. Once again, people who paid a little more attention to the specifics and are a little more analytically minded than me can probably pick apart all the logistics of how this worked. They have to destroy a tower to win. None of the Star Destroyers use their Death Star lasers in this fight. I don't know what the refresh rate is on these things. In Return of the Jedi, it was a few minutes. It doesn't matter what the refresh rate is on these things in this movie, because there's 10,000 of them. They've got horses, they've got Janna's horses, and that's a cool idea. I like the idea of, like, these weird sort of guerrilla tactics. They say in one of the First Order guys, like, why don't we jam their speeders? And another guy says, they're not using speeders, and boom, they're on the horses. And they're, like, riding them on top of a Star Destroyer. I like the idea. I like the idea that they're just using like everything at their disposal, and at some point they just have to straight up like ride animals. Once again, the logistics of it, I'm sure you could pick apart. Finn opens up like a little hatch, a very small hatch, puts in a few bombs, and it blows up the tower. The end. Rose is in this movie, and she's fine. She's just sort of, she says some lines of exposition. She's in some crowd shots. She's fine. She's not annoying. She's fine. She was a very, very, very okay part of this movie.
Rose's hair was better in this movie. She had like this weird, like, Kelly Marie Tran is like not a bad looking person in real life. They just like made her ugly for these movies. I guess, the argument against that would be like, well, she's in a war. She's running around getting her hands dirty. She's not meant to be looking her Sunday best. But it's like all the other main characters that's also true about them, and they don't look like weird and frumpy and gross. Like Poe and Finn both have this kind of like scrappy, down and dirty look, and there's a lot of people who still really want to bone them. And it's like even Rey is like, she has an appealing character design, and she lived in a desert planet, and like, she looks like, the way she's dressed looks like she's from a desert planet. It's kind of like tattered and scrappy in the first movie, but it still looks like not ugly. And also, why would Rose have like this weird like anime hairstyle in that case? Like she put all her stats into her hairdo. And in The Last Jedi, the movie she's introduced with, there's another character introduced in that movie who's wearing a gown. Holdo's just like wearing like a dress, has her hair dyed purple. I don't know. I hope Kelly Marie Tran is eating well. Hope she's getting 8 hours of sleep each night.
So Palpatine shoots lightning into the sky, and it hits all the good guy spaceships, and they all stop working, and they fall right out of the sky. Fall right out of the sky. But they don't fall out of the sky for very long. They're okay. Rey's on the ground, and she goes, "Be with me," like she did earlier in the movie. And it zooms into the stars. It's a nifty shot. You hear Jedi voices. You hear Liam Neeson, Hayden Christensen, Samuel L. Jackson. I forget the voice actor for Ahsoka, but she's in that. Some people felt like this was kind of like a cheap usage of Ahsoka. I don't know. It was fine. It didn't really do anything bad to her. It did. Some people pointed out that like this does mean that she basically died off camera sometime before the events of this movie. I don't really know how old Ahsoka would be at this point. She was like a teenager in the Clone Wars. So older than 10, younger than 20. Add 19 years to that for between 3 and 4. And that makes her between like older than 29, younger than 39. Add like 3 years onto that to get to Revenge of the Sith. Older than 32, younger than 42. Add 30 years onto that. Older than 62, younger than 72. So that's not a horribly short life. I mean, Jedi tend to live longer than that when they're not, killed. Also, I don't know how long her species lives. I don't know. It's fine, I guess. And so Rey gets up. Palpatine stops using his lightning on the spaceships. He starts using his lightning on her. She blocks it with one lightsaber. He says, "I am all the Sith." And then Kylo gives her, I think he force teleports to her the second lightsaber, and so she pulls out the second lightsaber, and she says, "I am all the Jedi," and now having 2 lightsabers means she can block the lightning better. And so Palpatine melts. Rey kills Palpatine, thus defeating his plan to have her kill him. I guess killing a Sith Lord is good when that killing is sanctioned by all the other Jedi saying, "Yeah, bruv, you got this." I guess on like a mechanical level, her having all the Jedi in her allows her to fight off him having all the Sith in him, so he can't transport the Sith into her. I don't know how any other Jedi killed any other Sith without this. It sure is a good thing that all those Jedi are dead. That way they could put themselves into one person. Once again, like, if that's the case, if that's the reason why she was able to kill him without turning evil is because she had all the Jedi in her, then it's not really a moral thing about, like, oh, don't let the darkness cause you to kill someone. It's totally cool to kill someone, just not Palpatine, because killing him puts evil into you, specifically him. But if you have a bunch of good guys inside of you, then there's no room for the evil guys. So it has nothing to do with darkness and everything to do with, like, ghosts.
It's like Rey was sitting down and she was like saving a seat next to her for her friend to sit in. And then Palpatine's like that one annoying kid that nobody wants to sit next to. And she's like, oh no, oh, he's going to sit next to me. Oh no, oh no. And then her friend shows up to class late. And she's like, oh, thank God. And her friend sits in the seat. So that way Palpatine can't. She's like, oh, I was worried for a second that he was going to sit next to me. And her friend is all the dead Jedi.
So, oh, it says in the Wikipedia page, Rey dies. I wasn't even aware that she was like dead. I thought she was just like about to die. So then Ben revives her. He uses the Force heal ability, which he also knows, I guess. Once again, we never get into the specifics of like, I don't really know if that's something that's believable that Ben could have as well, but he has it. Rey kisses him, then he dies. I guess she didn't get a chance to Force heal him. Because Ben just turns into a Force ghost immediately. He like dissolves like Yoda and Obi-Wan do. Then Leia, who has just been a dead body on a bed with a blanket over her this whole time, also like fades away.
I guess the Force like only picks people up like periodically, and it just so happened to be like a second after Kylo died. Like the Force showed up and was like, all right, we got any dead Jedi to make disappear? It's like, yeah, we got this one old woman. And oh, look at that, her son just died. That saves us an extra trip. Like, they come back like every few hours or so just to see any dead bodies left over. Obi-Wan just so happened to die like right when it hit. Body didn't even get to hit the floor before he disappeared. Yoda got a few seconds in. Luke wasn't even dead yet when it hit, but like the Force, was popping by like, hey, any dead Jedi, and saw that Luke was gonna be dead in like a few seconds, and they were like, we'll just take him now. He's still sitting up, but like no one's gonna notice.
It says on the Wikipedia page, the Resistance destroy the remainder of Palpatine's armada. I don't really remember how they do it. I guess 10,000 Star Destroyers is just an easy thing to destroy. Not one of those Star Destroyers uses its planet-killing weapon to just wipe them out.
So I heard a bunch of people joking about how the Star Destroyers don't know how to go up. And I remember thinking to myself, oh man, like did this movie really do something to imply that like they can't go up? Like have them in a situation where if they had just went up, it would have been fine, but they didn't do that or something? As it would turn out, they actually, Poe just straight up said, without their navigation controls, they don't know which way is up. That's just not a thing that my brain registered when I was watching this movie. I think I was just like checked out during that part. I just saw a space fight and accepted it. But yeah, the Star Destroyers don't know what up is. Someone wrote that. This is like a thing we were expected to take seriously.
People have pointed out that since Anakin was created by Palpatine using the Force to manipulate the midichlorians to create life, then that means that Anakin is like Palpatine's son, which makes Kylo Ren Palpatine's great-grandson. And since they're both related to Palpatine, that makes it incest. That kind of depends. It depends on whether Rey's parents were created by Palpatine the usual way that babies are created, or if he just did some like Force manipulation stuff to just make a baby get conceived. If it's the latter, then that means that you count as someone's child if they make you through the Force and not through usual conception. In which case, yeah, Anakin is Palpatine's son, and it was totally incest. If that's not the case, then it wasn't incest, and Palpatine just got laid. Rey goes to Luke's old home on Tatooine. Poe asks Zori Bliss if she wants to get back together. Like, he kind of like gestures at the concept. Like, he doesn't say anything. He like non-verbally asks the question, and she non-verbally says nah. So that led nowhere. Why even have that be a thing that's established about them if it goes nowhere?
Maz Kanata is in this movie, the orange from the first sequel, and she gives Chewie his medal. I don't know what for. I don't know why she has a medal that looks like the medal that Han and Luke got. But isn't that great that she gave Chewie his medal? He finally got it. Leia couldn't be asked to give it to her, but Maz, she's the real hero of this exchange. See, the funny thing is, before Disney, there was a canon explanation as to why Chewie didn't get a medal in that scene. It's explained somewhere that Chewie did get a medal, but it's part of like Wookiee culture to not accept awards publicly, which is totally like that's a thing that they made up. That wasn't like George wasn't like, well, you see, I was thinking that Wookiees, it would be part of their culture not to get medals, so he's not going to have the medal in this scene. Like, no, they messed up in that movie, and then, like, some expanded universe thing ended up, like, fixing it. But, like, it works. Whereas this movie does away with that. And instead, their explanation is, no, Leia actually was inconsiderate and just did not give Chewie a medal because he's covered in fur. And it took 30 years for this to be rectified by some orange lady who wasn't there and probably didn't even have a concept of what was going on at that time. They were so desperate to show themselves fixing this error that they got rid of the actual already established fix for this error and replaced it with a worse fix for this error that does not actually fix this error. So, Jonna is Lando's daughter somehow, and that was confirmed outside of the movie. And you needed to be confirmed outside of the movie because inside of the movie, all we got was her meeting Lando at the end and him asking, "Who are you?" and her saying that she doesn't know. And he's like, "Well, let's find out." And that was supposed to set up that she's his daughter. But it kind of sounded like he was hitting on her. But maybe that's just because everything that Billy D. Williams says makes it sound like he's hitting on someone. So that was strange. Oh yeah, Dio is a droid in this movie. He's fine. Yeah, he's fine. He's not, like, annoying or anything. He's kind of got, like, a limited speech. Like, he only has, like, a certain preset words he can use, but he's fine. It is sort of like a thing, like, R2 gets nothing in these movies. And, initially it was a thing of, like, oh, well, here's BB-8, the main droid of this movie. But, like, his buddy R2 is still around, as, like, the second guy. But now it's like, here's BB-8, not even... What did BB-8 do in this fucking movie? But now it's like, here's Dio. But, we haven't forgotten about BB-8. He's still, like, the second guy. And there's R2, the second guy to the second guy. It's like we couldn't even stick with BB-8. We had to have a new droid on top of our new droid. So then Rey goes to Tatooine, and she goes to the old Lars home where Luke lived. She takes the two lightsabers, Luke's and Leia's. She puts them in the sand, and she uses the Force to, like, sink them down into the sand to, like, put them to rest. And now Rey has her own lightsaber, which they just Anakin's lightsaber, the one that broke. It just now occurs to me. Where is Luke's green lightsaber? Does that one not get laid to rest? I guess not. But Anakin's lightsaber, the blue one, the one that broke in The Last Jedi, is just fixed in this. And, like, nothing's even said in regards to that. It just, like, isn't broken anymore. Like, Kylo's helmet, at least, we see it get put back together, and it's got these, like, crack marks in it now, after having broken. The lightsaber is just pristine. It's funny, in, like, official Star Wars stuff, they've, like, renamed Anakin's lightsaber to Rey's lightsaber, but now at the end of this movie, she has a new lightsaber she's made. So that's Rey's lightsaber too. Like, it was worth calling it Anakin's as opposed to Luke's, because Luke made his own lightsaber, a green one. And that should have applied here as well, but now Rey has two lightsabers attributed to her, when we could have just called one Anakin's, one Luke's, and one Rey's. Also, I was thinking about how people try to justify Luke having the blue lightsaber instead of the green one at the end of The Last Jedi when he's doing the Force Skype call fight. Like, they say he's supposed to be appearing as, like, the legend that is Luke Skywalker, even though Kylo should know that, like, the lightsaber is broken at this point, and that should have tipped him off that Luke was not actually there. But, like, the legend of Luke Skywalker, Luke would have been far more well known with the green lightsaber than with the blue one. Kylo only ever saw Luke with the green one, like, when he was being trained. The lightsaber would have importance to Luke because it belonged to his father and because it was, like, the first lightsaber Obi-Wan gave him. But in terms of how people on the outside view Luke, they would associate him with the green one more than with the blue one. Luke became a legend by redeeming Vader, and he had a green lightsaber when he redeemed Vader. But anyway, Rey has a new lightsaber now, as opposed to at the beginning of the movie to replace the one that got broken, because the one that got broken got fixed. But now at the very end, she has her own lightsaber. It's yellow. That's fine, I guess. It's made out of the end of, like, the big stick she had in Force Awakens, which is nifty, I guess. She also, when she's going into the Lars homestead, she, like, gets a little piece of whatever the sand version of driftwood is and, like, slides down a hill like she did at the beginning of The Force Awakens. It's like, hey, that's a nice little bookend. Would have been great if it was bookending a good story, because then maybe I would have felt something. I did feel something. I felt like that's neat. But it would have felt a lot more final if it was at the end of something worth it. And then some old lady comes by and says, no one's ever here anymore. Who are you? And she says, I'm Rey. And the old lady says, Rey who? And she doesn't know what to answer, but she looks over and she sees Luke and Leia's ghost. And she says, Rey Skywalker. The end. People say that, like, it's, like, kind of disrespectful to Luke and Leia to, like, take their last name. I mean, in universe, it seems like they approve. I imagine, like, the Star Wars movies is his version of Luke. Luke in that world would probably be like, yeah, it's fine. You seem like a nice lady. You can have my name if you want. It's, I don't know. Once again, it's something that might have meant something if there was actual build-up to it. If she had some sort of deep connection to the Skywalkers, if they in some way acted like an adoptive family to her, it might have hit good, you know? You might have been like, yeah, she is Rey Skywalker. But I don't feel anything towards it. She knew Luke for less than a day. She knew Han for less than a day. She knew Leia for a few months, but not a few months that we see on screen. Did Leia even go by the last name Skywalker? Or did she keep Organa? Should she be Rey Organa? Or should she be Rey Solo? Is Leia's last name Solo? Or did she not have the last name anymore because Han left? I don't even know. I don't even care. Also, the old lady who asked her name, it should have been Watto instead. You cannot change my mind on that. Hashtag justice for Watto. So that's the movie. That's Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker. It was never going to be good because it was following up a movie that wasn't good and that blew all potential that this trilogy had. A lot of people said that the pacing of this movie like really threw them off. And that's like a thing that doesn't really like bother me. Like there's a lot of movies that people say like the pacing is bad and I never noticed that. So that's more of a personal thing for me. The movie's pacing didn't bother me specifically, but it'll probably bother you. So like in regards to like this movie, now you get to find out why these two videos are titled the way that they're titled. Here it is, it's coming up. So the way I see like how this movie affected me in terms of my viewing of this franchise, it's like The Last Jedi shot me fatally with a gun, and as I was lying there bleeding to death, The Rise of Skywalker showed up and tried to resuscitate me. It was like, you know, it was like picking me up like, hey man, come on, get up, it's alright, you're gonna live. I'm like, no man, I'm dying. I'm like, look, we got the Emperor. Don't you like the Emperor? It's like, yeah, that's the Emperor, but I'm still dying. And we got, look, Lando's back. Lando's cool, right? Yeah, Lando's cool, but I'm still dying. Look, we got Zori Bliss's butt cheeks. Isn't that nice? It's like, yeah, those are nice, but I'm still dying. It's just throwing everything it can at me to try and resuscitate me. And in the process of trying to resuscitate me, accidentally breaks my ribs while performing CPR. But, like, it doesn't even matter that it broke my ribs because I was dying anyway. That is how I feel about The Last Skywalker. Or The Rise of Skywalker. The Last Jedi killed me, and The Rise of Skywalker broke my ribs trying to resuscitate me. But it doesn't even matter, because I was dying anyway. It's like this movie was like... There's good things in this movie. There's good ideas in this movie, sprinkled throughout. But it's like every good idea is surrounded by, like, bad execution and bad connections. It's like this movie is a soup. And, like, all of the ingredients in the soup... No, not all of the ingredients. Like 75% of the ingredients in the soup are good. And you would be able to put up with like the other ingredients that are bad if the broth was at least good. But the broth is not good. The broth is really bad. And the broth could have been good if not for the fact that the broth from the last soup was left over and that broth was just horrible and they weren't allowed to wash out the bowl before they put in the new broth. Does that analogy make sense? Because if it doesn't, I'm not explaining it any further. Here's another analogy. I thought of both of these and I want to share both of them. See, I can understand people liking this movie in like a purely like turn off your brain kind of way. Whereas like The Last Jedi tries so very hard to get you to turn on your brain. Like The Last Jedi wants you to think real deep about what's going on there. And then you do think real deep about it, and none of it makes any sense. The Rise of Skywalker is at least like a thing you can enjoy in a purely like, ooh, lightsaber fight, ooh, space battle, lightning, ooh, the Emperor, ooh, Lando. It's like in the beginning of the movie, they hyperspace skip. You know, they go from place to place, and it's like you need to do that with this movie. You need a hyperspace skip from good part of the movie to good part of the movie, and just skip over all the bad stuff in between. It's like the beginning of this movie was secretly telling you how you're supposed to watch this movie. So yeah, none of this was worth it. I hope you're happy, Disney.